And yet another very excellent morning to all of you on out there, my dear friends. I'm ever so thankful once again that you all could join me. We left off with our completion in the book of Revelation, and I found it suitable for our prophecy studies to venture back into the Old Testament, and let's go over, it'll just probably take a couple of weeks to go over the book of Zechariah. He's one of the minor prophets. He's actually the book right before the final book of Malachi in the Old Testament. And man, what an important book. I would say right beside of Daniel, Revelation, and what Christ spoke of himself, I would say that Zechariah is right up there with the prophetic knowledge that is found within it. Well, first, let's give a bit of a backstory on this prophet Zechariah. We don't know much about him, but we do know that his sole purpose was basically to get the Jewish people to rebuild the temple, because Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, 70 years before, had destroyed the temple, destroyed the city of Jerusalem, destroyed its walls, and there was pretty much nothing left. So it's the most discouraged people on probably the face of the whole earth. Now, it's a very important thing on how God encourages them through this prophet to rebuild the temple, because he says, look, unless you build this temple, rebuild this temple in Jerusalem, he says, unless you do this, your Messiah will not, there's no hope of the Messiah ever coming to the earth and to rule over the earth and to make you all kings and priests over men. Well, that is where it relates to us today, because now we're going to be studying about a lot of the millennial reign with Zechariah, because in order to encourage the Jews, God shows Zechariah these visions concerning primarily the millennial reign of Christ. Let's begin. In the 8th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, came the word of the Lord unto Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo, the prophet, saying, the Lord hath been sore displeased with your fathers. Zechariah served the Lord in the years after the remnant returned from the 70-year Babylonian exile. His prophetic career began in the reign of Darius, the ruler of the Medes and Persians. His career was not marked by the reign of a king over Israel or Judah, because there was no king of Israel or Judah in this period after the exile. But he says that this is in the 8th month that he's writing this, under the reign of Darius. The 8th month falls in with the latter part of our October and the beginning of November, so almost right around the time of winter. Haggai had begun to exhort the Jews to resume the work of building the temple 2 months before this. That's very important to note how Haggai the prophet and Zechariah, they almost go hand in hand, because Haggai and Zechariah are both prophesying unto them, much like Ezekiel and Jeremiah before the exile. Now you have these two prophets. Had begun to exhort the Jews to resume the work of building the temple 2 months before this, and they had actually resumed it on the 24th day of the 6th month. Now he's talking about in the 8th month, but they had begun in the 6th month, that is in the beginning of September. In the book of Ezra, we actually read about these two prophets being lumped together. Then the prophets, Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo, prophesied unto the Jews that were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of God of Israel, even unto them. Then rose up Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua the son of Jozadak, which is Joshua. We'll come to Joshua and Zerubbabel. Keep those two names in mind. Joshua is the high priest at this time, and Zerubbabel is he's the civil leader of the people. And began to build the house of God, which is at Jerusalem, and with them were the prophets of God helping them. Now just take a look at Haggai first. This is the only time that I'm really going to show Haggai or emphasize Haggai, to show you all what these prophets were prophesying in order to encourage the people. Remember in Revelation about the great earthquake and all, and how that occurred right before the second coming of Christ? Well, we read all the way back in Haggai, for thus saith the Lord of hosts, yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land, and I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord of hosts. So here, this is great encouragement coming from these two prophets, Zechariah and Haggai. Build this temple, and the Lord is telling them, look, these are the things that are going to happen once the temple is residing in Jerusalem. But the very first words that we have recorded from Zechariah from the Lord is, the Lord hath been sore displeased with your fathers, he's telling the Jews. Sore displeased. He was so long and so much provoked, God was. He was so long provoked against their fathers that his displeasure at last broke out into the flame which consumed your city and temple, and punished the inhabitants thereof and their children with a captivity of 70 years. Yet now he declares himself willing to be reconciled to you upon your repentance. Therefore say thou unto them, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Turn ye unto me, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will turn unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. Be ye not as your fathers, unto whom the former prophets have cried, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Turn ye now from your evil ways and from your evil doings. But they did not hear, nor hearken unto me, saith the Lord. Your fathers, where are they? And the prophets, do they live forever? By my words and my statutes, which I commanded my servants the prophets, did they not take hold of your fathers? And they returned and said, Like as the Lord of hosts thought to do unto us, according to our ways and according to our doings, so hath he dealt with us. So the Lord is giving warning, don't be stiff-necked like them. Don't say that don't just pay lip service to me. Don't just say that you'll serve me and then go and do your own thing. Well, notice right here something very moving. First, he says, Where are your fathers? Meaning they're dead. Now, this is quiet. This is very stern. And then he goes on and says, And the prophets, do they live forever? The true prophets, who died as all others. They do not nor must live always to warn you that you're only going to have a Jeremiah for so long. You're only going to have a preacher for so long. You're only going to have a man of God in front of you for so long. It quite strikes me how people so hate the preacher, the messengers from God, and instead of hating their own sins, they'd rather hate the person telling them the truth, whenever in fact that person is their best friend. No one else is trying to help them in that manner as the man in whom they hate, probably more than any other. Upon the 24th day of the 11th month, which is the month Sabbat, in the 2nd year of Darius came the word of the Lord unto Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo, the prophet, saying, I saw by night. Now here's the first of many visions. After this, there's just vision after vision after vision after vision. I saw by night, and behold, a man riding upon a red horse, and he stood among the myrtle trees that were in the bottom. And behind him were their red horses, speckled horses, and white horses. And this is why I love Zechariah. It wastes no time in getting immediately to the Lord himself. A man riding upon this red horse among the myrtle trees at the bottom. A man, Jehovah, the second person of the Trinity, manifested in man's form, an earnest of the incarnation. This is Christ in the Old Testament, called the angel of Jehovah, which he was often called in the Old Testament because they had no other way to verbalize that God was in the flesh. A very shocking thing. But he was riding upon a red horse, the color that represents bloodshed, implying vengeance to be inflicted on the foes of Israel. But notice how he's among the myrtle trees, and in the immediate context, this would have been the symbol of the Jewish church at that time. Not a stately cedar, like they always boasted of, how strong and stout, but a lowly, though fragrant myrtle. It was its depressed state that caused the Jews to despond. This vision is designed to cheer them with better hopes. And then you have these horses following him. And these represent angels. Red horses exercised offices of vengeance. Others, the white, those of joy. Others, the speckled, those of a mixed character. God has ministers of every kind for promoting the interest of his church. Then Zechariah said, O my Lord, what are these? And the angel that talked with me said unto me, I will show thee what these be. And the man that stood among the myrtle trees answered and said, These are they whom the Lord hath sent to walk to and fro through the earth. And they answered the angel of the Lord that stood among the myrtle trees. This would have been the angel speaking unto Zechariah at this time. So you'll see in the book of Zechariah, as well as throughout the Old Testament, how they'll mention the man Gabriel, as well as in the New Testament, angels will be referred to as men because they come in the appearance of men quite often in order to not completely astonish the people that they're visiting. But these answered the angel of the Lord that stood among the myrtle trees and said, We have walked to and fro through the earth, and behold, all the earth sitteth still and is at rest. The world was lying in proud security. There was no sign of that shaking of nations, which Haggai, which we mentioned before, there was none of that happening, that Haggai had foretold should precede the coming of Messiah and the restoration of Israel, and no sign of the predicted salvation appearing. This was their state, and the angel sees their despondency, recognizes their disappointment, and intercedes for them. So these angels are pretty much saying, look, there's absolutely no chance of your Messiah showing up without this temple being built. That's what's being conveyed to Zechariah to tell the Jews. Then the angel of the Lord answered and said, O Lord of hosts, how long wilt thou not have mercy on Jerusalem and on the cities of Judah, against which thou hast had indignation these 70 years, 70 years? Now this isn't Christ asking this. This is the angel speaking unto Zechariah, which we learn right here. And the Lord answered the angel that talked with me with good words and comfortable words. So the angel that communed with me said unto me, Cry thou, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I am jealous for Jerusalem and for Zion with a great jealousy, and I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease. For I was but a little displeased, catch this, for I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. So the Lord is showing right here how his favor has come back upon the Jews, and how much that he loves them, and how upon their enemies, and whom treated them far worse than he ever willed for it to happen. And we're seeing right here, and I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease. And then he says, I was a little displeased, but they made it worse, because they treated you all so much worse. God had been angry with his people, the Jews, it is true, but only in measure, chastising them like a parent for their good. But the heathen hastened the affliction. They exceeded their part as mere instruments in God's hands and wished to destroy Israel altogether, or to oppress them beyond the proposed period of their chastisement. Therefore thus saith the Lord, I am returned to Jerusalem with mercies. My house shall be built in it, saith the Lord of hosts, and a line shall be stretched forth upon Jerusalem. Anytime that you read about a measuring rod or a line, like in Ezekiel, or how John, he's in Revelation, and there's this, they're measuring the city. Well, anytime that you read about that, there's great significance in that. A measuring line to mark out the city with a view to its being rebuilt. It had been measured before for destruction. See, so there's always an importance going on. It's more emphasis placed upon God seeing the city of Jerusalem as a whole whenever he's having it measured. Now right here we're going to be seeing the millennial reign begin to be mentioned. Cry yet, saying, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, My cities through prosperity shall yet be spread abroad. And the Lord shall yet comfort Zion, and shall yet choose Jerusalem. But it's also very worthy of note about the immediate context mentioned right here for historical purposes. About 4 years from the time of this prophecy, Zion was comforted and Jerusalem was specially chosen. So about 4 years after this prophecy, the temple was rebuilt 4 years after Zechariah gave this prophecy. So there is, just like in so many other prophecies, immediate fulfillments, but then a much broader thing is happening right here. Those things are only a shadow of what is actually about to come. And we'll see that very, very clearly in the book of Zechariah. Then lifted up I mine eyes, and saw, and behold, 4 horns. And I said unto the angel that talked with me, What be these? And he answered me, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. The 4 horns which scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem are 4 nations, Babylonians, Medes and Persians, Macedonians, and Romans. When this vision was beheld, the kingdom of the Babylonians had passed away. That of the Medes and Persians was instant. That of the Greeks and of the Romans was yet to come. Now that you can go all the way back to Daniel, and he tells about these other nations. Now there are different thoughts on what these horns mean, but that's about the best that I can gather. And the Lord showed me 4 carpenters. Okay, so these horns are before him, and then there's these 4 men. Then said I, What come these to do? And he spake, saying, These are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head. But these are come to fray them, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, which lifted up their horn over the land of Judah, to scatter it. So these men are coming to pull down these horns. In the immediate context of Zechariah 1, in the first chapter, which we just went over, we read of God's promise to gather his own back into the Holy Land, rebuild it, then execute judgment on their enemies. From here on, we will read of the more broader context of these prophecies, namely how the church will be gathered with him, their enemies punished, the Holy Land rebuilt, and him reigning over the world. We'll actually be getting into more details that you really don't find in other books concerning the millennial reign about how Christ himself will rebuild his own temple. Now for chapter 2, I lifted up mine eyes again, and looked, and behold a man with a measuring line in his hand. Then said I, Where goest thou? And he said unto me, To measure Jerusalem, to see what is the breadth thereof, and what is the length thereof. And behold, the angel that talked with me went forth, and another angel went out to meet him, and said unto him, Run, speak to this young man, saying, Jerusalem shall be inhabited as towns without walls, for the multitude of men and cattle therein. Now, isn't that staggering? The emphasis at the time of Zechariah was to not only rebuild the temple, but to also rebuild the walls to keep away these enemies from attacking them. Is there a future allusion to Jerusalem not having walls? Well, before we get to that, let's read the next verse in order for clarification purposes. For I, saith the Lord, will be unto her a wall of fire round about, and will be the glory in the midst of her. Whoa! Ho, ho, come forth and flee from the land of the north, saith the Lord, for I have spread you abroad as the four winds of the heavens, saith the Lord. This is staggering. Just in a couple of verses, we see enormous future prophecies, even future for us. This prophecy had a short-term fulfillment in God's protection of the rebuilding work and blessing of the city under Ezra and Nehemiah. He promises, so long as these people are trying to stop you from rebuilding, I'm going to keep them from it. That is a very small thing that happened, and it was just foreshadowing what is to come on a huge scale. But clearly, its ultimate fulfillment will be rebuilding under the rule of the Messiah. In Haggai, as we've already went over, we read of a great shaking of the nations and of the world, as well as a great earthquake in Revelation 16, which causes all the cities and walls of the earth to crumble. Now that's to happen in the time of God's wrath, which is to come. Jerusalem will have no need of walls during the millennial reign, and God will certainly be a wall of fire. At the battle of Gog and Magog in Revelation 29, we're told about how there are no walls that are needed at Jerusalem. Christ is reigning upon the earth. We're reigning with him, the whole church, all the saints, even the angels, and how this huge army is amassed after Satan is let loose out of his prison. He's let loose after the 1,000 years. They come and try to attack Jerusalem, try to annihilate us, and we just sit there and watch fire come down from heaven, a wall of fire. And we're also told other astonishing things in this, how the Lord will be the glory in the midst of her. Now, back then, they would have just thought, well, that's the Lord will be in the midst of us. We'll have the temple. We'll be able to go in, and things will be as they've always been. No, this is literally meaning the Messiah himself will reign among us. Deliver thyself, O Zion, that dwellest with the daughter of Babylon. Notice the great significance with Babylon being their primary enemy, and then you skip ahead to Revelation, and the whole world is called Babylon at that time. Do you see how this immediate context is just showing such a much, much more epic scaled event to come? For thus saith the Lord of hosts, after the glory hath he sent me unto the nations, which spoiled you. For he that toucheth you toucheth the apple of God's eye. Now, what is this apple of God's eye, and what's the significance behind this saying? The pupil, or aperture, through which rays pass to the retina, is the tenderest part of the eye, the member which we most sedulously guard from hurt as being the dearest of our members, the one which feels most acutely the slightest injury, and the loss of which is irreparable. God says he is so in love and so attached to Jerusalem and to his people, just in general, to the church and to us. He says, I am so attached to all of you that he is very sensitive to any wrong, any pain that occurs among us. For behold, I will shake mine hand upon them, and they shall be a spoil to their servants. And ye shall know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me. Sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion, for lo, I come, and I will dwell in the midst of thee, saith the Lord. Now he's saying all those that made prey of you, that beat on you, and that treated you so badly, he says, I will turn the table, and then you shall do that to them, shall be a spoil, shall be overthrown and spoiled, and become a prey unto their servants. The Jews, who were first spoiled by and then made servants to the nations, who conquered, captivated, and hardly used the Jews. And indeed, this was fulfilled in Esther's days and in the Maccabees' times. And once again, we're going to see it on a much larger scale with how all the nations will be gathered at the Battle of Armageddon, and 1,000 years after that, consummating at the Battle of Gog and Magog. So this is just a build-up of history happening. Now just catch what it continues to say. And many nations shall be... So the Lord, he says, I'll be in the midst of you. It'll be a city without walls. And he makes special mention of don't mess with people of the north. And that always represented Babylon, which we'll come to in the book of Jeremiah. He makes very specific note of that. But then he goes on and says, and many nations shall be joined to the Lord in that day. Many nations. And shall be my people, and I will dwell in the midst of thee. Now this is obviously talking about the Gentiles being part of his people. And thou shalt know that the Lord of hosts hath sent me unto thee. Adam Clarke commented on this, how many nations will be joined to the Lord. This most certainly belongs to the Christian church. No nation or people ever became converts to the Jewish religion as a whole. He's meaning people as a whole, like whole tribes. They never wanted to just all join the Jews. Now there are converts, but it's all individual and far and few between. No nation ever wanted to be converts to the Jews, but whole nations have embraced the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ. And the Lord shall inherit Judah, his portion, in the Holy Land, and shall choose Jerusalem again. Be silent, O all flesh, before the Lord, for he is raised up out of his holy habitation. Now, that's also, I believe, got very deep connotations to it, that carries with it, about how his holy habitation, meaning up from the throne of heaven and placing actions from him directly upon earth. And we'll see that very intently in the millennial reign, how he'll actually come down from his throne of heaven and reside in the rebuilt temple at that time, which he himself will rebuild. Now, we'll come to a lot more details within this, but you see how just filled with these prophecies is Zechariah, and trust me, it just continues to build from here. I thank you all for joining me once again, my dear friends. I hope that you all learned something. God of peace be with you all. Amen.